The Flying Fortresses, the pioneer four-motored bomber, in the air since 1935. Steamroller construction, weight about 25 tons, speed better than 300 miles an hour, range 2,100 miles.
We have no idea where we're going. There's rumors flying everywhere. And some of us had some contact with the ground crews. We found out that they'd taken a full load of gas. That's bad news. That means we're going deep, 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 deep into Germany. So you got to fight your way in. You got to fight your way across the target, and you got to fight your way back all the way back. Tough stuff. And if you can fly 5 missions, they'll give you an airboat. But they'll get shot down. And if you can fly 25, they'll give you the DFC. So, pull the fade back. There it is. Everybody says, oh God, I can't. Going to Berlin. Going to Berlin. First daylight radio in Berlin. And then, oh joy, I find out I'm in the elite air of the 8th Air Force. Not of my group, no, or my wing, the 8th Air Force.
The United States Army Air Force is off for Berlin, bucking a 70-mile-an-hour headwind as it bombs away over the German capital.
And for the first time, I had this horrible feeling that I ain't gonna make it. I've absolutely run out of luck. Everybody I know has been shot down, and I ain't gonna make this. There's no way. Here I'm my 29th mission. I just sick. Just sick. You know? Just superstitious. But I made it, and when we got back, I was going to buzz the field, and I'm just so numb. All I wanted to do was get a drink of whiskey and go to bed. Just numb. I just numb.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, soon to meet our thunder, and a boys give her the gun.
Here's a guy that grew up in a large family in the Great Depression at the very bottom of that pyramid. His dad was competing for the contract to empty out outhouses. He was so desperately poor growing up. Hearing his parents talk about where the next meal would come from, that they don't have money for food, he knew he never wanted that for himself later on, and he never wanted that for his family. It was his fear of poverty and starvation that constantly drove him. It affected his entire life. He had to trade his youth and education to be able to send $20 a month to his family to help them survive.
He had probably a real rough upbringing. He taught everything, everything he knew, he learned himself. He read books a lot. He loved to read books. And he loved to fly. He was an excellent pilot. Smartest man I've ever met.
But he didn't have the benefit of education. He had to drop out at a young age to help support his family. He had 8 siblings and joined the Civilian Conservation Corps and building bridges and different public works. But he had access to libraries there, and he had his first exposure to football games there. But the libraries were the most important thing. Here he had access to all of this information, and he was able to start reading and teaching himself things he didn't know. And as the war came on, the Army Air Force was just starting up, and he wanted to join, but at first you had to have a college degree, and later you had to pass a college equivalency test. So he studied, taught himself, and he passed it. After the war, he wanted to be an airline pilot, but you had to have a college degree, and there were tons of pilots coming back from the war, absolutely flooding the market. So he was relying, here I am, an officer with experience, distinguished flying cross, air medals with clusters. Had to have a college degree. So that dream was just smashed immediately upon coming home. He had a young family. He needed money. So he had minimal savings from the war. He tried to buy a gas station and wasn't making any money. He sold that off. He bought a couple old cars and fixed them up and put them in front of the post office, and he started pitching to them. And as soon as he started doing that, started pitching to the customers, going to the post office, he sold the car the very same day, and he made as much money on that car as he did in a whole month in the Air Force. In fact, he thought he'd only be a car dealer long enough to get money to buy a ranch. But he was just very good at selling cars, and he just kept doing it.
Been so successful at it, you can't give it up. You find something you can do, works well, you just can't give it up.
We had the Dodge store in Huntington Beach. He had stores in Pomona. He had stores in Houston and Reno, in San Jose, California, Sacramento, California, Alaska. Working with Cal was really easy. He would do the commercials, and he would come up with whatever to get the people in the store. Our job was to sell them when they got to the store.
Cal, give a new car to your wife, she will love you all your life. Go see Cal, go see Cal.
He was one of the best there ever was. Doing a car commercial, there's a guy that can do a car commercial on TV for 30 seconds and make you run down to his dealership and buy a car. He could do that. He was that good on TV.
I first did it really slow with a big drum roll. If you need a better car, go see Cal, with a big drum roll. It was the best deal by far. Then I got thinking, I got to speed this thing up.
If you're looking for a better set of wheels, I will stand upon my head to make a deal. I will stand upon my head till my ears are turning red. Go see Cal, go see Cal, go see Cal.
He was buying so many stores, he needed to get around in a hurry. So he finally bought a jet so he could get up to Alaska, get up, to Texas and different places across the country. He would go down to flight training school. He would sit down there for a week at a time, go through all the grueling exercises and the tests and you have to go through and the physicals. And he would come out past them flying colors. And he could fly, like I said, he could fly a plane. You'd never be afraid to fly with this guy. And I believe he flew all the way up till he was 92 years old. He could have a piece of property and trade it for another piece of property. And the property he traded for would be worth 10 times the amount of what property that he had.
Another thing I've done, I've taken dealerships that were broke and busted and build them up and then sell them. If I have a dealership that somebody wants more than I do, I'll sell it to him.
We had a Chevy store in Sacramento. We sold the store, but he wanted to sell the property. When they traded the property for the PX Ranch up in Nevada, which I guess was owned by Bing Crosby or something at one time. Well, the property in Sacramento, all the dealerships ended up folding, and that part of Sacramento went downhill, and everybody closed up, and nobody's there. But, that property was probably worth maybe $2 or $3 million, and he traded it for a ranch that was worth probably 4 times that amount. Everything he ever touched turned into gold. It was amazing. He had bought a big ranch up in Orland, California, and then he bought the Chevy store in Sacramento, so it was close to where he lived. And the ranch, we call it the Big W, that's what's the name of the ranch. And I forget what year, he decided he was going to go into the almond business. And you could drive for hours on this ranch and just see nothing but almonds. And that was fantastic. That was producing more income, I think, than the automobile industry was at the time for him. And then he went into the olives for the extra virgin olive oil, and that exploded. Plus he had the ranches up in Nevada where he did the cattle. Yeah, he could ride a horse, rope a cow, and fly a plane. I don't think I've ever seen anybody dislike Cal. I've never heard of anybody talk bad about him. Cal was loved by everybody. Everybody liked him.
I only knew him as Grandpa because we grew up on the family farm, far from any metropolitan area or any place where he had a car dealership. People knew him and loved him because of his dog spot TV commercials and his longevity, and because he was a very charismatic and loving person. He was a people person, and anybody that saw his commercials or met him, they knew that.
Woo! It's cleanup time down here. Come see Cal. If you want your famous low, if you want to save some dough, come see Cal, come see Cal, come see Cal. We're open to midnight.
There were 2 pieces of advice that he gave me quite frequently. One was get the best education that I could. He never had the benefit of a formal education. He knew how hard it was for him to overcome that, how much harder he had to work than the other guy, how much further he could have gone if he had that framework, that basic foundation that we all take for granted, that I took for granted. The second piece of advice he gave me was work very hard. Don't go home when there's work to be done. Don't go on vacation. You need to get the work handled. You need to take care of business. My grandfather led by example, especially by the hours he worked, how he conducted himself professionally, and how he treated his other employees. He always treated everyone well. He always loved his employees, and they loved him.
The boss is what all of his employees called him, the boss. To me, it wasn't just a term of respect, but it was a term of endearment. If anyone was an entrepreneur, it was Cal Worthington. I worked for Mr. Worthington for close to 30 years. He was dedicated, hardworking, humorous, kind, generous, thoughtful, just all of those things. He was a wonderful person to be around and work for. He loved being around his family. He loved the holidays and family gatherings. He liked the hustle and the bustle. He liked people in the kitchen cooking and kids running and music playing and everyone enjoying the moment.
He would do anything for his children, anything. His children were his life. He started selling off his dealerships when his son Calvin was growing up because he wanted to spend more time with him. It cost himself millions of dollars, but he wanted to spend more time with his son. His son Coldren was growing up in Northern California. He could have lived in any number of states, save tax money, anything, save millions of dollars, but he wanted to be close to his son.
He was in Long Beach, and he was part of our city. But he was an American success story. He was an icon in his field. He was an entrepreneur, and he was a giant in his industry. And to have that type of business in Long Beach, it brings in more dollars, employs more people. Just made a great benefit, was a great benefit to the city of Long Beach. We were lucky to have him, and I was lucky to know him.
Well, howdy, I'm Cal Worthington, and this is Giant Worthington Ford. It's Worthington Ford in Long Beach. We're open till midnight. Come on out, see you here.
If you want your payments low, if you want to save some dough, go see Cal, go see Cal, go see Cal.
I will stand upon my head to beat all deals. I will stand upon my head till my ears are turning red. Go see Cal, go see Cal.